Is it time to raise the mission accomplished banner for inflation? Are we good on it or not quite yet? In my opinion.
So I think what you're hearing. We had a speech this morning actually by Philadelphia Federal Reserve President Patrick Harker, who is saying that he believes, and this is what I'm hearing more and more, that inflation has indeed peaked, and this last report is another indication that it's on its way down. But there's some troubling things that are within this report. Now, we heard President Biden within the last 20 minutes. He came out taking credit for the economy, saying that his spending that he's doing is actually working. But if you look inside the report, the CPI largely dropped on energy and also big ticket items dropping. So as the interest rates have gone up, used cars have become more expensive because to borrow the money, it gets more expensive, as well as new cars, large appliances. That's been a slowdown in sales there. And you know that consumer spending is about 70% of the economy. So we're seeing people make choices not to buy the bigger ticket items. So yes, inflation is coming down, but it might be an indication of a slowdown later on in the year.
Edward, I want to touch on that a little bit because I've started to kind of build this idea in the last couple of weeks that, in particular, the how quickly things moved economically during the pandemic has kind of altered the way that we process data, in that normally we'd say, okay, we need to wait a year or two in order for, all this to work its way through the system. And now if things look good just for a few months, we're like, hey, everything's all clear. Are we just, have we grown accustomed to too fast of a cycle, and what the Fed is doing is just going to cause that slowdown later on potentially?
Or the other side of that, technology is giving us more real-time, more accurate data. And the Fed looks at 3-year trends. That's kind of where they are, or 3-month trends, I should say. They're looking for trends of 3 months or so where they can start to say, hey, things are starting to change. But again, when you go into this report, though, I mean, the inflation is still up in those critical areas where people have to spend money. So, for example, rent is up 8.3%. You look at bread, it's up almost 16%. Eggs are up almost 60% year over year. Milk is up 12.5%. Lettuce is up almost 25% year over year. These are staples that people have to buy. So inflation is still there and more entrenched. And that is the problem for the Federal Reserve. It's because it's harder to get rid of that sticky inflation. Now, energy prices will bring down the overall inflation, but that core inflation without food and energy prices, where they're really having a difficulty getting it out of the system. And that's what they're trying to work on now. And there's been indications that it was fairly easy. The economy is coming along. We have unemployment is at 3.5%. Easy to go from 9% inflation down to now we're 6.5%. But the hard part is going to be going to 2%. And the resolve is there for the Federal Reserve. We'll have to see how much pain the American public's willing to take.
Yeah, and when we talk about, the potential damage from those higher rates, it is clear that, look, at least at the moment, there's no sign of slowdown in the broader economy, but these things can take time to develop, in particular with housing. Remember, the housing market started falling apart back in 2006, but we didn't really find that bottom until late 08, early 09. So I think it's something where to declare victory today, hey, the possibility of victory may be higher today than yesterday, but we're not there yet.
Exactly, and there are some indications that the Federal Reserve is indicating they're going to have 2 more rate hikes at 25 basis points during the next 2 meetings, and then pause, and then wait to see what's happening with those lag effects that you had talked about. But the interesting part is going to be the data we're seeing towards the end of the year. If you do the math, there will be inflationary pressures going back up. So if the Federal Reserve stops too early, inflation is going to come right back with vengeance. So this is something that they're going to have to look at. Experts are also looking at it. I've talked to some economists who said the Fed can't stop. They need to keep going. It seems like we're going to get a pause from the Federal Reserve, and we'll have to see if that is that soft landing they're talking about, where it's enough, where the interest rates are high enough to push down inflation at the end of the first quarter of this year.
Very good. Edward, appreciate you joining us today, and we will catch up with you soon.